Missouri, and welcome to this week's edition of What Retirement Means to You, brought to you by the team of Means Financial Group, based right here in the St. Louis area. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio, we have Jerry Means, who is the president and founder. We've got a great show for you today. The title is Risk On or Risk Off. If you are approaching retirement or already in retirement, it is so important to make sure you adjust your risk tolerance accordingly. That's what we're going to be getting into today. Jerry, my friend, it's great to be in the studio with you. How are you this week?
It is. I'm doing great. How have you been?
I'm doing really well. It's been really a joy to get to know you, and I'm very honored to get to share this time with you and with our viewers at home.
Yeah, I'm excited about the show today.
Awesome. Well, as we said, the title of today's show is Risk On or Risk Off. Here's the reality. A lot of folks get very wrapped up in the accumulation years of planning for retirement when you are working hard and you're putting that money away and it's growing for you. But as you near retirement and enter retirement, what a lot of folks don't realize is that their risk tolerance might need to change, and it might be different from their actual risk capacity. So we're going to be diving into what those two things mean today, what they mean for you, and how you might want to adjust your investments and financial plan accordingly. So this is going to be a really fun conversation.
I think so.
Wonderful. Well, I want to start off by just first asking you, when you meet folks for the very first time, they come in for their on-track retirement review with you, what are the kinds of questions that you're asking to help someone understand what their capacity for risk actually is at this stage in their lives?
Yeah, so when a client comes into the office, or a potential client, they're brand new, my first thing is to kind of set them at ease, because let's be honest, when people come to a financial advisor's office and they're sitting in the parking lot before they go in, I feel like maybe their palms are sweaty, they're nervous. Like, are they going to tell me I did things wrong? Are they going to tell me I have to work longer?
It's that fear of judgment, right?
Yeah, they feel like they're going to be judged. And the first thing I do is try to set them at ease and say, listen, you know, we're here just to get to know each other and try to find out what you're looking for, what you're uncomfortable about. Because usually if they're in my office, there's some kind of need that they came in for, right? Even if they have a current advisor, there's a reason why they're in my office. And so I like to start by finding out what kind of investor they are. So I kind of ask questions about investing habits and how they feel about it. And often I find out that people are in the wrong risk profile. Maybe that was their profile when they first started investing, but now that they've gotten older, because we do specialize in working with the 50 and over crowd, so they're closer to retirement. So I've jotted down some questions to kind of run by you like I would with them, and we'll just kind of do a little role play, and I think it will help the viewers. They can play along and kind of see.
Absolutely. I'm so excited, and I have no idea what he's going to ask me, so this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so let's just have some fun with it, right?
Yes.
So what kind of investor would you consider yourself to be? You know, A, would you consider yourself to be a very conservative investor, meaning you don't like to take a lot of risk or any risk at all? B, or would you say you're a moderate investor, saying that, well, I would like to take a little bit of risk, but not much. You know, I'm comfortable with some ups and downs, but not the big swings. Or C, would you say you're an aggressive investor and you're okay if the market goes up and down, you feel like you have time to ride it out and you don't lose any sleep over it? Which one of those do you think you would be?
All right. Such a good question. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to answer this in two different ways. So if I rewind the clock back to before I got into this industry, if someone had asked me that question and I didn't know what I know now, I would have probably said moderate to conservative, because I don't like to take a lot of risk. It's never fun to lose large amounts of money, right? But knowing what I know now, and knowing that time is one of the greatest assets that we have, the fact that I'm still in my mid-40s, I am an aggressive investor, because I know that I've got a lot of time to make up the ups and downs in the market, and that retirement is several years away. But if I was nearing or entering retirement, I would definitely want to dial back that risk to more conservative, because at that point, I can't afford to be losing money when I'm entering retirement.
And that's a great point. And I think that's kind of what the questioning is all about, is people come in, some people don't even know what kind of risk profile they have, or they think that their advisor is automatically shifting them to a more conservative portfolio just because they're getting older and closer to retirement. I've had so many people come in and I'll ask those questions and they'll say, well, I'm a conservative investor because I'm getting ready to retire in 2 or 3 years and I don't want to lose any money. We hear that a lot. But I'll look at their financial statement, and sometimes even in the fine print on the back, it'll say this is an aggressive portfolio. right? Or moderately aggressive. And they're like, I never even noticed that before.
Right.
Because the reality is people look at the first page of their statements usually, and they want to see if they made money or lost money.
Right.
But they're not digging too much into those. And you know, and also those statements are not designed the way a financial advisor would probably design them, right? That sits across the table from people.
Right.
We would make them a lot easier to read, but for some reason they're so complicated.
Well, and to break it down to really help folks understanding what they're actually looking at.
Yeah, so we basically sit down and first I just want to see where they're at before we can figure out where they're going. And we have that conversation, you know, how did you feel about the drop of 2022? How much money did you lose? How did that make you feel? You know, and so you can really dive in. I mean, I've been doing this 25 years. So I've seen the dot-com crash in the early 2000s. I've seen the financial crisis of 2008. And I've seen just a couple of years ago in 2022, we had a really bad year. And it's funny because people do have short-term memory, right? So in the 1990s, people forgot that the market went down because of the dot-com boom.
Right.
And then in 2000, they had a wake-up call, and people were coming in to see me saying, I don't ever want to lose money like that again. But then, as soon as the market starts doing better, right?
And
from
recovering.
From about 03 to 07, the market did really well. People were like, I want to go a little bit more aggressive. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't turn it off and on because the market's doing well. You're chasing the market. That'll get you in trouble. And then 2008, again, people came in and said, hey, I lost half my money. Can you do something different than my advisor did so that doesn't happen again? And then we had a 13-year run. In 2022, it all happened all over again.
The longest running bull market we've had.
So the markets are secular. And if you're getting ready to retire, the last thing you want is for that market to crash right before you're ready to pull the trigger on that retirement. Or you just retired and you're starting to draw income, you're in the deaccumulation phase, which is something I'm sure we'll talk more about today. It can really harm you when you're pulling money out and the market drops.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so what is another question or the next question you typically ask folks to really help dig deeper? Because it's one thing for folks to decide, okay, I'm aggressive, I'm moderate, I'm conservative. How do you help them go even deeper to see what's really driving their current investments and what they want to be doing with their money?
Well, I like to ask people, let's play a hypothetical. And, let's say you have a $1 million portfolio.
Okay.
And the market drops 20%. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to write it out? Are you going to wait a few months and kind of see what happens and stick where you're at? Or are you going to sell everything and go to cash and just sit on the sidelines until you feel like it's safe to get back into the waters again? What type of investor would you be if that happened?
Okay, well, if I had a $1 million portfolio and I had a 20% loss, I wouldn't like it. I would feel it, right? It would hurt. But again, knowing that I'm in my mid-40s, that retirement is 20 years away, I know that I have time on my side to make it up. So I wouldn't do anything. I would stay the course. The way I would look at it is, oh, everything's on sale right now. It's a great opportunity to buy more, right? That's how you buy low. But again, if I was nearing or entering retirement, I would not be happy about that at all.
Yeah, and that's how you should look at it right now. But again, most of my clients are that 50 and over crowd, right? They're in the retirement red zone. They're within 5 to 10 years of retirement, maybe even sooner. Or they just retired and they're in that critical phase right afterwards. And I also ask people, after I ask them, what if it dropped 20%? I would ask them, what if you lost $200,000?
Yes.
It's the same question.
Right.
But it provokes a different reaction from people.
Putting that monetary amount on it really drives it home, doesn't it?
Percentages, are just numbers on a page. But when you see your life savings drop by $200,000 in that example, that can make people lose sleep at night.
For sure.
And when you're retired or getting ready to retire, that's the last thing you want to do, right? You want to be able to enjoy your retirement and not have to worry about those roller coasters. So we try to put strategies in place for people to help avoid that.
For sure. Well, I know that you are going to offer the opportunity today for folks to be able to call in and schedule a time to come in and receive their very own on-track retirement review from you and the team of Means Financial Group. Talk a little bit about what's involved in that process and what folks can expect.
Well, for those of you that call into the show and schedule our on-track review, it's just that. We want to make sure that you're still on track to retire when your goal is. Or if you retired, we want to make sure that you stay retired and you're only working because you want to, not because you have to. And when you come in, we're going to look and do some tax analysis. We want to make sure that you're taking the most tax advantage in your portfolio that you can. We want to look at your longevity. What's your income plan? How are you going to keep yourself from running out of money? And what we're talking about today is the risk on, risk off. We want to make sure that you're not taking more risk in the portfolio that you really need to. So for those of you who give us a call or use the QR code on the bottom of your screen, give us a call. You can get a second opinion. And I always tell people you can't get a second opinion from the people that give you the first one, right? So just give us a call. The number's on the screen, 844-878-1293.
Wonderful. Jerry, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, again, that number there for you is on the bottom of your screen, 844-878-1293. Or if you'd rather not talk to someone right now, but you do have your smartphone handy, if you simply pull it out, you can open up that camera app, just point, click, and scan that QR code that you see there down on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Meads Financial Group will reach out to you to schedule your complimentary visit and on-track retirement review that way as well. We have a lot more to get into today on our discussion of risk on or risk off. Stay with us.
I was like most kids. I wanted to be, law enforcement or fireman or baseball player, of course, that sort of thing. Growing up, even at an early age, my grandfather was a big influence on me. He was kind of the monarch of the family that everyone went to, and if they had questions, they always went to my grandpa, and I was the oldest grandson. And I noticed that during the holidays, we would be at his house, and he had 2 living rooms, and one of the living rooms he always stayed in, and everyone else kind of gathered in the other room. And he was reading the Wall Street Journal and watching the stock market and, taking a look at where things were and talking to me about politics. We just had a really good relationship, and I took an interest in investing. So he taught me how to read the Wall Street Journal when I was 13 years old. So if you can imagine, I went to school, I knew more about investing than most of my teachers did. I knew what bonds were, what equities were, how the market worked. I still wasn't planning on getting in that line of work. It just was interesting to me. It was kind of a bonding time with my grandfather. And then fast forward into my early 20s, I got a phone call from a financial advisor that worked with my grandfather, and he said, "Hey, we're looking to recruit, young guys that might want to get into business, and your grandfather said to give you a call." And once they showed me what they did, I thought, this seems like it would be a good fit for me. And 25 years later, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary in the business, so it was the right move for me.
Welcome back. You're watching What Retirement Means to You, brought to you by the team of Means Financial Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with President and Founder Jerry Means. We are talking today about the importance of adjusting and changing your risk tolerance, your risk capacity, based on where you are in your retirement journey. There's so many factors that come into play, and this is why no 2 financial plans are alike, right, Jerry? Every plan that you design for folks is individual, it's customized, it's personalized to them. This is something that you do day in and day out for folks, is really building that customized retirement plan. And so I want to figure out what are some other questions that you're asking folks when they come in for their initial on-track retirement review so that you can accurately assess where they are in this process.
So there's so many things that can come up in a conversation with the client that are really important. And you'd be surprised, people forget to tell me things. So I really have to dive in. And because, as you mentioned, we do want to tailor the program to them. And I use a lot of analogies in my practice because I feel like it helps people bring it home and understand it.
Yeah.
And it's just like buying a suit. If you go to a department store and you can find a suit off the rack that will fit you, right? But it doesn't fit you like a tailored suit does, right? You can get by with it, but you're not going to feel the best about it. And that's what I find out is a lot of people come into our office, they kind of have that off the rack plan, right? Maybe they even have the right risk profile, but they don't really understand what they own inside there. They don't understand where they're going to pull their income from. So I ask them those questions because I tell my clients that here's the strategy. We're going to write out a plan exactly where we're going to pull your income from. We're going to design a plan that has certain risk in this bucket and income in this bucket, right? And a cash emergency in this bucket, right? We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to tailor that plan based around your other needs. One of the questions I always ask people, and it seems like this comes up more and more, is there anyone else, because most of my clients, their kids are grown, right? Most of them have grandchildren now. I have grandchildren now. But you'd be surprised how many people are taking care of their grandchildren, or maybe they have a child at home with a disability. Maybe they're an adult child, but they're taking care of them. Maybe they're taking care of a parent, or both, right? They're the sandwich generation.
Absolutely.
So that's an important thing for an advisor to know. It's not just their income and their retirement, but is someone depending on you, right? I think a lot of advisors see someone who's retiring and don't think about that. You know, they just think about the income plan and the risks that they're going to take, but there's so much more you need to know about a family. So I ask them that. And is there anything I need to know? Are you going to be traveling? You know, that, and some people will say, yeah, I'm going to travel. Well, travel can mean different things. You know, are you going to take a trip once a year to Disneyland with your grandkids?
Right.
Or are you going to go to Europe for a month out of the year? Those are two different expenses,
Yes.
right? Although Disneyland is getting to be about the same thing as a trip to Europe.
Pretty expensive as well, yes.
Yeah, so anyone that's taken kids lately can see that. But, you know, it's really important to get a vision of what retirement means to them. You know, that's the name of the show. My firm is Means Financial Group. I'm Jerry Means. But it's not just a play on my name. I really want to find out, what does retirement mean to you when you sit down? We always can look at the numbers, right? But tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family dynamic. You know, is this a first marriage or a second marriage, right? Because a lot of times spouses split their assets up if it's a second marriage.
Right.
And maybe there's kids from the first marriage and kids from the second marriage, or maybe they both have kids from separate marriages and they want to leave their estate plan differently. Those are all important things to tell your financial advisor.
For sure.
So I try to dig into those. Sometimes it almost feels like I'm getting too nosy, right? But you know, that's what you have to, if you really want to get to know someone and know about them. And I think people appreciate that.
For sure.
But it can be uncomfortable to ask those questions sometimes, but that's my job. My job is to have those uncomfortable conversations.
Well, it's you're doing your due diligence. You know, you can't give the right advice, you can't give the right recommendations without having the full picture, without having all that information. And, you know, I always say to folks, when people are asking me and they're nervous about meeting with a financial advisor, I always say, the more information you provide, the more they're going to be able to help you. And it's because you care. And as a fiduciary, you have that legal responsibility and legal obligation to always serve the client's best interests. The way that you do that is by going there and having those conversations and finding out the information that you need to be able to develop a plan that is in fact in their best interest.
For sure, and we are a fiduciary firm or firm working under the fiduciary standard. So you're right, we do have to ask those questions, or we should be asking those questions. Doesn't mean that every advisor does, but they should be asking those questions.
Right.
I mean, again, I like analogies. If you go into the doctor and you say, hey, I'm not feeling well, he doesn't just get out the pen and start writing a script, right? Or he or she. They're asking questions, right? They're going to check your heartbeat. They're going to check your pulse.
How long have you been feeling this way?
Yeah, they're going to have you cough. You know, they're going to ask you about your family history, right? Which can feel sometimes like, why do you need to know all of that? But there's a reason for it, right? They're diving in. They're really trying to get to the root of the problem so that they can come up with the right solution. It's the same thing if you're a good financial advisor. You're going to ask those questions and really try to get to the root of things.
Right. Well, if you're using me as the example today as we continue on in the show, you know, what would be some other questions you would want to ask someone sitting across from you during this initial on-track retirement review?
Well, I mean, I would just kind of start off with something easy, like what does retirement look like to you? What do you want to do? How soon do you want to retire? What age are you thinking about retiring, and why are you thinking about that age?
Interesting. So it's funny, even though I'm in this space all day, every day, in terms of my retirement, it still feels so far away, although I think time is going by faster than ever before, right? But I know that my husband and I, we want to be able to travel together. We want to be able to do those things while we're healthy. And so I think one of the things that we're very cognizant of is making sure that we have a solid retirement plan in place that gives us permission to be able to spend the money to do the things that we want to do in the years when we have the physical health and capability of doing them versus putting it off. You know, one of my stories, Jerry, is that my grandparents really wanted to travel the world. They had dreams of doing so, but they never did because they were afraid of running out of money. So they kept putting it off someday, someday, someday. Well, unfortunately, then my grandfather's health started to fail. My grandmother lovingly cared for him, which she was happy to do. He passes away, and at that point, when she could have gone on to potentially do some of those travels, her health started failing. And so they never got to do that. And we don't want that to be us. But I think if you don't have that plan in place, you don't have the permission and the peace of mind that says, you know what, we can afford to do some of these things that we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to your story, I had he's a client now, but when he came in, he was a prospective client called into the TV show. And when we sat down, his biggest fear was taxes, right? And so I asked him, like, what are the kind of things that you want to do?
Right.
And he said, well, I wanted to do a lot of traveling and things with my wife, but we were always afraid to pull money out and pay the taxes, right? Because we had all of our money in pre-tax accounts.
Which so many folks do.
We knew it was going to be a big tax hit,
Right.
so we kept putting it off. And his wife got ill and passed away, unfortunately. And he said that was one of his biggest regrets. I was so worried about paying the taxes on the withdrawal, I didn't get to do what the money was meant for to begin with.
Right,
So
right.
I don't want my clients to go through that. So
For sure.
I couldn't help them in that situation, but we were able to do some other things. But when I sit down with people, I mean, that's a good story to tell people is, you know, when you retire, you don't have to worry about spending your money if you have the correct plan.
Right.
You know, we want to figure out a budget. So some of the other questions I'll ask is, do you have a mortgage, you know, on your home? And when will your mortgage be paid off? What is your mortgage payment? Because if they don't have their house paid off, that's going to be one of their biggest expenses in retirement.
Sure, yeah.
Because not everyone has it paid off by the time they retire. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't retire, but we need a plan for those payments.
Right.
You know, I have some clients that are in a 2.5% interest rate still, right?
Yes,
So from a financial planning standpoint, maybe they shouldn't pay it off, right?
Right.
Because you can get 5-6% in a fixed account now.
Right.
So it's
The
free money
trade-off.
that you could have out there.
Yeah.
But then also people say, well, I have the money to pay it off, and I know that I shouldn't because I have a low interest rate, but it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside just knowing I don't have that debt anymore.
Right.
I never tell anyone that they're silly. Again, we don't judge, right? I never tell anyone that they're silly for paying their house off, even if they have a low interest rate. Because there's two answers to the question, and I get asked that a lot. Jerry,
I'm
should
sure
I pay
you
it
do.
off
Yeah.
or not?
Yep.
And I always tell them there's the two answers: there's the financial planner answer, and then there's the emotional answer. I'll give them both to you, and you decide. From a financial planning standpoint, at a 2.5-3% mortgage, I don't think you should pay the house off because we can make more money on your money, even in a guaranteed account. So why pay it off and let the bank have that money?
Yeah.
But the emotional side is, if it makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside and you can sleep at night and you don't have to worry about that debt, you can't put a number on that value, right? It's a non-tangible, you know.
Yeah.
So I never tell people that. It's really a preference.
Right. Well, if someone's watching today and they're going, you know what, I would like to have that kind of peace of mind. I want to know what my options are and then be able to have a plan that's developed, customized for me. What would you say to them?
Well, the first step is always the hardest one, and that's taking action. And what you need to do is pick up the phone, give us a call, come in, and let's just have a conversation. You know, there's no pressure when you come into our office. We just want to get to know you. That first meeting is all about just having a conversation and getting to know one another. I open up about my family, my practice. I answer questions about myself and how we're set up. And then I want to know a lot about you. I want to know, what is your family dynamic? What does retirement look like for you? And we want to make sure that you have all of the pieces of puzzle in place together. So pick up the phone, give us a call. It's no cost, no obligation. We would love to sit down and meet with you.
Wonderful. Jerry, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, that number to call is there on the bottom of your screen, 844-878-1293. Or again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code, and that will get you connected to receive your very own complimentary on-track retirement review. More on what retirement means to you right after this.
We're a pretty small boutique firm. When you come into our office, it really does have a family feel to it. My wife works in the office. My son works in the office as well. We also have our dog Maui. He's kind of the mascot. When you do come in, you meet our receptionist, Jen, and we call her the Director of First Impressions because she's great with people. We have a small building that I own. It's very easy to pull up and see us and walk in and get greeted right away. Something that I hear from a lot of people is they just feel comfortable. They feel like they're sitting down and sitting with a friend already. We just sit down with them and educate them and tell them about our services and what we do and how we do it, and try to find out if we're a good fit. A lot of my staff is family, so it is a family business. You know, and most people that come in, that's the most important thing to them is their family. So it's good for them to see that in our environment.
Well, welcome back to What Retirement Means to You. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Jerry Means. We've been talking today all about the specifics of building a retirement plan that's customized to you. We started off today, Jerry, talking about the need to look at someone's risk tolerance versus risk capacity. But what I love that we got into in the last segment is that you really are able to present recommendations to folks, and then it's up to you. You get to decide what you want to do with your money. And so you're providing the recommendations based on the information they're giving you, but you as the client get to decide. One of the things I know that is challenging often for a lot of folks is in order to build a retirement income plan, you have to know how much money people need to live off of. How much money are you spending each month? And a lot of times folks have no idea. And I think that's because the word budget gets a really bad connotation. You know, I always call it's the B word for a lot of people, right? So what is your take on helping folks determine how much income they're going to need to live off of in retirement?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest sticking point. People will come into my office and say, I just want to know if I can retire. That's why I'm here. You know, I'll ask, why are you here? I want to know if I can retire. Well, that's a loaded question. You know, of course, I need to get to know them, know about assets and all of those things. But a lot of people will say, well, I heard if you have $1 million or $2 million or 4 times your salary, or, you know, I hear all kinds of wild, crazy things that people have read and came up with.
Yep.
But the real answer is, how much are you going to spend in retirement? You know, because we kind of have to work backwards from there. So the first way we do that is we fill out a budget sheet. And again, like you said, the B word, right? People think, well, I don't want to be constricted to a budget.
Right. They feel like it's a constraining thing, right?
And it's not that I'm putting them on a budget. What I want to know is, what is your budget already? What are you spending right now? So I have a form that I give them that jogs questions. Now, there's all the obviouses, right? The obvious things like the mug, right? The mortgage, utilities, groceries, right? We want to know what your mug is.
Right.
But then I start throwing things in like, okay, how many animals do you have? And people are like, well, that's an interesting question. Like, well, I have 3 pets. Well, how often are they going to the vet? How much are those vet bills? Or, you know, do you have one that's sick that you have to go to all the time? People don't think about those things.
Right, right.
I had a lady said, you know, I do pay for my daughter's, granddaughter's tap lessons. A client that had a grandson with a traveling baseball team. We need to put all of those things into the budget so that we know how much you're going to spend, so we know how much we need to generate in guaranteed income to meet that.
Yes.
And so it's more liberating than it is being the bad word, you know? So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, so you are there to help people figure out where they're starting from and where they want to go. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, so we're offering the on-track review. If you want to pick up the phone and give us a call, we'll sit down with you. There's no cost, no obligation. Wonderful.
Jerry, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, thank you so much for joining us to get started on your very own complimentary on-track retirement review. Again, that number to call, 844-878-1293. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you next time on What Retirement Means to You.